I don't think last night's win over the Chicago Bears is as bad as a lot of people are making it out to be. There's no really such thing as a bad win in the NFL. The Vikings had to get this to have a chance at winning the NFC North division and even more importantly, winning the NFC conference. The passing attack wasn't pretty. 231 yards, one touchdown, a pick for Darnold, 24 of 40. But the running attack was actually very good. 29 of 114 with two touchdowns. Three touchdowns for the offense, and then, of course, the Vikings kicker who ends up coming back. Remember, he had been hurt. Talking about, of course, Will Riker goes 3 of 3, did knock down a 52-yarder, 12 points. You can't overly complain about this game. It's in the division. You're going up against a team who is out of the playoffs, so they're not playing for much, but still they are playing for their jobs. That's another thing, is there's no NFL team that's ever going to be playing for nothing. A lot of guys out there are competing for their jobs next season, their jobs at the future. The Vikings, they get up to a 13-0 start. The second half was a little bit too close for comfort, but the Vikings, of course, pulled away with that Aaron Jones touchdown and that late field goal by Reichard. Minnesota, they're focused on bigger things right now than a regular season late game against the Bears. They're trying to win this division, and they're going to have a great opportunity to do so. If you look at the Lions, their defense is atrocious right now. I'm not overly confident that they're going to beat the Bears in Week 16. The Vikings, we saw they were kind of sloppy a little bit in a sense, and they win 30-12, which is big in the NFL. But also the Vikings defense is absolutely elite. The Lions defense is terrible right now. I mean, they've got probably 15 guys that are injured that aren't going to be playing in that game, and we're talking about starting caliber players, and then their backups are injured. They've got a lot of guys out. Chicago, they've got the weapons. They've got Caleb. It seems like they're kind of due for that game. They've lost 8 in a row, so if they do get that, that's huge for the Vikings, because then all of a sudden that puts Minnesota to the NFC North division, assuming that they go out and take care of business in their next game, which is going to be tough. Like, the Vikings have a tough schedule the next 3 weeks. They're at Seattle. But the Seahawks, we just saw the Packers go in there and beat them and play a great game. So why can't the Vikings? I think the Vikings are a better team than the Packers, so I think they'll be able to do it, if I'm being honest. But back to the Lions schedule. Then they're at San Francisco, and then they take on the Vikings in Week 18. If the Lions lose, let's say their next game, and they do go to 12-3, and then the Vikings are 11-2 or 13-2. Well, if the Lions win their next game, let's say the Vikings win their next game. Well, if the Lions do beat the Vikings, well, it still wouldn't matter because they'd have the tiebreaker and they'd be tied, and the Lions would get the division. So even if the Lions do lose a game, it doesn't matter. The Vikings still have to win out here. And if the Vikings do win out, they have a 98% chance to win the conference, which is just crazy. And that 2% chance, of course, would go to the Philadelphia Eagles, depending on just who they played. It would be kind of crazy. But still, Minnesota, they're in a great spot. Defensively, they've got what it takes, of course, to go out there and to compete with anyone in the league with all the pressure they send. I mean, they're blitzing in over 50% of passing downs, making it tough. As a Colts fan myself, we went up against you guys like a month ago, and we came up short. Joe Flacco was out there, but it was a big-time test for our offense, and we failed. You guys got the win in Minnesota, of course. And then the offense for the Vikings is definitely, in my opinion at least, the strength of this team. The defense is great, but the offense is just otherworldly with the way Sam Darnold's playing. I mean, he's been one of the better quarterbacks in football this year, and then you got Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, T.J. Hawkinson. You got Aaron Jones, who, if he can continue to play like this, go over 100 yards from scrimmage with that touchdown. Cam Akers giving you some burst. He was able to dive into the end zone. The Vikings, they're going to be able to run with anyone in the NFC for sure. And we've seen it this season. Like, you look at the games that the Vikings have lost. They did lose to the Lions on a game-winning kick. It took the Lions having a beautiful drive, perfect drive, really, flawless, Week 7 to go down the field. And then, of course, they lost to the Rams the game after that, 30-20. The Lions, number 1 seed in the NFC, and then the Rams, 8-6. They're red hot. They were 1-4 going in, or not? So they're not going to their bye. That was the Bucs. They were 1-4, and then all of a sudden they put together a big streak. So 2 very tough teams. I mean, Dan Campbell, who might win Coach of the Year, and then Sean McVay, who just flat out might be the best offensive mind in all of football. So those are 2 games that they're tough for sure, but to win every other game, I mean, in the Vikings have played good teams. Like, they played the Niners when they were healthy, or a lot healthier. The Houston, they beat Green Bay. They swept the Bears. I know Bears aren't good, but still, divisional team. And that's it. That's some good wins right there. And then, of course, Seattle with a winning record. Green Bay 11-4. The only games that the Packers have lost this year, the Eagles, who were the 2 seed, they've lost to the Lions. They've lost to the Vikings. I think they got swept by the Lions. So that's like the Packers are a legit team, man. And I look at Minnesota right now, and I just have more faith in them than I do Detroit, just because they're a lot healthier. They can get it done on both sides. The Lions, in order for them to win games right now against good teams, they have to just get in a shootout with them. They have to outscore them. That's why we saw them kick an onside kick with 12 remaining against the Bills. Before the Vikings, they can have a game where their offense is a little bit off, but their defense is so good that they can pick up a win there. They can have a game where their defense is off, and they can get into that shootout with Sam Darnold and these weapons and win it that way. So Minnesota, they're just a more balanced team. You look at Philadelphia, I think that would be a tough test for the Vikings. But if Minnesota gets that 1 seed, they wouldn't have to see the Eagles until of course, the conference championship, and that would be in Minnesota. And home field is going to be the thing here too, because the Vikings, I want to say, are 7-1 at home. They're 7-1 at home. Of course, the one game that they lost at home was against the Lions. Again, just one of those games where Detroit, they were rolling, came down to the final drive. The Lions get down to field goal range, and they knock it down. It was that close, too. So I just can't stress it enough. I have a lot of faith in the Vikings. I've had faith in them really since the offseason. I didn't think they'd be this good. I didn't think they'd be competing for the NFC conference. But in terms of Sam Darnold, Kevin O'Connell, if you followed the Vikings ever since he came here, he's worked with way, way less talented quarterbacks, like Nick Mullins, for example, and he's been able to elevate them. Sam Darnold was a former second pick in the draft by the Jets, I believe. I think Baker went over him. Big arm, athletic guy. That high point pass he had to Justin Jefferson down at the 1 was one of the best throws I've seen all season. Just thread the needle between the linebacker and the defensive back. I mean, there's only a couple of quarterbacks in football that can make that throw, and you guys can probably think of them right now, like Mahomes, Allen, Herbert, Lamar. I mean, it's so difficult to make that type of throw, and Darnold made it look easy. But I do need to see a little bit more consistency, of course, from this team. I know they've statistically, they're winning games and they're having no issues, but just down this stretch, they're going to have to play their best ball at Seattle. Seattle can't afford to lose that game. They did lose to the Packers at home. If they drop 2 straight games at home against the Packers and the Vikings, I mean, they're just giving the Rams the division at that point. And then at home against Green Bay, at Detroit. This is a tough-ass schedule, but I really do believe in the Vikings, and I think they're going to win out.